Are you seeking a better way to accelerate your sales, to scale your business, to live a life with no limits? Accelerate Sales Podcast features global experts who have cracked the code to recurring revenues with proven sales systems and get you on the fast track to scaling. Now let's accelerate your sales with today's episode.
Hi, I'm Paul Higgins and welcome to the Accelerate Sales Podcast, episode number 432. Today's guest is going to blow you away. You're going to learn the power of research before you're doing outbound and how that will make it work so much better. The second is meeting buyers on the channels or their preferred channels and some really cool techniques to find out what they are. And the third is some awesome scripts for phone and LinkedIn that is going to get you higher response rates. If you're a first-time listener and you love it, please subscribe. And we're really here for cloud consultants. So if you adapt your SaaS vendors technology to get results for your clients, you're in the right place. And if you're a regular, love those reviews. There will be a summary and in the app you're listening to, and also there's a full transcript so you can get those wonderful scripts as well. And before I interview Antoine, I'd like to thank our sponsors. The first is the Cloud Consultants Collective, which is a free Slack community for cloud consultants helping each other to run our businesses better. And the second is SendSpark, which is a great video tool that has the ability for you to shoot a video, short video, and then link it to an existing video to increase your sales. And you can get free 6 months at paulhigginsmentoring.com/SendSpark. So our guest today is from his early teens, has always been entrepreneurial. He's fascinated by people, sales, and psychology behind it. Meant that he started to ask a lot of questions to get answers. He has been fortunate to build a career over the 15 years that spans across corporate events, publishing, advertising, community sales, as well as the passion for connecting buyers and sellers. He has led the creation of Sales Driven, and Driven is DRIIVN in 2020, with a desire to improve the perception of the sales profession by minimizing waste and improving efficiency and effectiveness from the top of the funnel to accelerate sales revenue and eliminate the outdated practices of today's sales process. So you are in the right place. So what I'll do now is hand you over to Antoine Marsden. Brilliant to have you here, Antoine.
Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, well, as we said in sort of the prep, I'm very excited about this because some of your methods are very different to the ones that, I've seen my clients using. And you yourself listening to Antoine today will find, I think, another gear in your outbound approach. So very excited. But why don't we kick off with who are the clients that you love to work with and what problems do you solve for them?
So it's a good question. The type of clients that we like to work with, I would say, range from those that have never really done outbound before. So maybe they're used to inbound demand generation, or maybe they're used to finding their own leads across networks or across referral networks, but never really understood the kind of outbound process, and also organizations that appreciate the outbound process but haven't quite been able to nail what that looks like and have an understanding that outbound is a huge developer of mid to long-term pipeline. And so therefore working with an organization that's going to help to deliver that kind of consistency and understanding of how to scale that is a win for them. So those that aren't necessarily looking for just a shot in the arm, but those that are looking for a sustained period of growth and understanding about the outbound development model.
Yeah, and the sales team size, is there any particular size? Is it because most of us are doing the sales ourselves, but are you focusing on larger sales teams? Just give us a bit of perspective on that.
So we've worked with companies that have their founder selling the products. So maybe the founder's quite technical in their approach, doesn't quite understand how to develop outbound at scale. So that's definitely an area where we can help. And we also work with companies right now that have teams of up to 10 to 15 salespeople. So I'd say that our kind of sweet spot is anywhere from your ground up startup looking for, a kind of outbound sales development professional, right through to a 50 million turnover company that have, a well-established sales team, but are potentially looking at other areas to develop their sales into.
Yeah, and look, normally I talk about 4 key ways to drive revenue in the business or leads. One is through referrals and network, like you spoke about before, and try to get as much revenue from your existing clients is always, the easiest. The second is your partner, your vendor, your SaaS partner. So, get leads from them. Then the third is outbound, and the fourth is strategic partners. And, I think you're right. Normally people have got 1 and 2 working okay. I think 2 they can always improve on, but definitely 1 is where most of the leads are. But they're like, you know what, I just can't get to my growth targets with this approach, and it's not predictable and it's not repeatable, right? So then they, come for help with outbound. So that's why I'm excited to have you on. And are they the similar sort of pain points that you see, or are there other pain points that you see, especially down at the founder level? I think that's probably more appropriate for you listening today.
Yeah, I think one of the most difficult things as a founder of any business, and I've been there myself, right? So myself and my business partner starting on this journey, we sat down and we had to really think about who is it that is going to want to buy from us? Who is it that we need to have those conversations with internally? The types of problems that we're looking at, who is it that's likely to be thinking about those problems consistently and how they can potentially fix it? And so it does come with, after that, a huge amount of complexity as to how you craft your message, how you get it out to the market, how you even generate a list of people that could potentially be of interest to even hear about this, and then developing something impactful enough for them to want to listen. So I think that from the level of founder, where you may have developed an actual product and that product inside out, and you've got a very good understanding as to the kind of within the product itself, those specifications, how it's going to impact on an organization that uses it, but not necessarily so much as to how to sell to the pain of your ICP and how to do that from an outbound perspective as well. I think that for us here, when we look at the outbound kind of model, it is to complement anything that you are doing where you're already seeing leads come into the company, but also it is going to become a massive driver of conversation that allows you to understand how your product is viewed in the eyes of your potential ICP, and to give you some very valuable feedback as to where those organizations that you are targeting happen to be in the market right now. Yes. Because I think that that's the biggest driver of you understanding how you develop your business and where, what those opportunities look like for you, not just in the immediacy, but, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from now.
Yeah, great. And I know that you, on your LinkedIn profile, which we'll put the links in the URL, put the links in the show notes, I should say. But you talk about that, a lot of the top of the funnel activities people are doing at the moment may cause you harm, right? So what do you mean by that?
So, yeah, it's a good question. And for me, I think what you're seeing a lot of, especially in the marketplace today, is huge amounts of sales engagement platforms alongside marketing platforms. Companies are cobbling together these platforms and sending out huge amounts of messages. And for me, what I see is that we only have a finite market. No matter which market you're in, there's a finite market. It's not a never-ending supply of leads, because the way that it works, obviously, you have people that come into an industry, they then fall out of that industry, move into other industries, and then they retire. So you're only going to have a certain size of industry that you're going after. And if you are abusing that industry, if you like, with a lot of the email marketing methods out there, with a lot of the spam methods out there, even on the telephone, what you're doing is you're causing some irreparable damage to the audience that you are going after, because eventually your messages will stop being seen, stop being heard, because it's just in the avalanche with everything else that is coming towards them. So where we believe the value lies is, okay, you have an audience that you want to get your message out to. They need to understand who you are, but it's raising yourself above the noise that is falling into people's inboxes every day, what they're coming across on their LinkedIn. And really, our focus is on finding those people on the channels that make the most sense for them to communicate with you, with other or with other who it might be. But then from there, really using that to then make your campaigns more focused and aligned on those channels that deliver that response.
Yeah.
So
and look, that makes perfect sense. I think by default we typically go to the channels that we're most used to, right? Like for me, LinkedIn. I for so long I just only did LinkedIn, and then looked at all the activity and everything, and they just weren't on LinkedIn. Their profiles are on LinkedIn, so it's a great research tool, but not the best communication. And how do you find out about your audiences? How do you work out what are their best platforms? Because is it generic for the certain target market, or is it down to individuals? Just sort of take us through that, because personally I find that difficult to know what platforms people prefer to be communicated on.
No, it's a valid point, and it's not an easy thing to do. It takes a ton of time and effort, because essentially you need to go, I guess, right at the very start of your process into understanding, okay, if I were to call my target audience today with the right level of messaging, how many of them are actually going to pick up the phone? How many of them are likely to pick up the phone? So the way that we do this is we focus on research calls, right? So these calls are to find out if I am speaking to Paul, or if I am speaking to Adam, or if I'm speaking to Antoine, if this number is the correct number, if you are still working at this company, if you are looking, or if you are the right person for decisions involving X, Y, and Z. However you want to go out to your audience and the types of questions you want to ask them, those questions are simply to enable you to have a conversation to understand more about them. But it's also to enable you to understand, I've called this prospect 5 times on this number without them knowing who I am, and they've picked up. That says to me that they're more likely to pick up a number pick up the phone to a cold call than not. Just the same for if I employ that method on LinkedIn, or if I employ that method on emails. Does this person come back to me more on this channel versus this channel? Or do they come back to me at all on this channel? If they don't, then that's something that I can erase, because it's very unlikely I'm ever going to get a response there. And what that enables you to do is start to tailor your lists from the very beginning. So you might take 1,000 names or contacts from, let's use a well-named data provider of ZoomInfo. Now, ZoomInfo will give you 1,000 numbers for each of those people. But if you call all of those 1,000 people over the course of a week, 2 weeks, as part of your outreach, you're probably going to get frustrated very quickly, because what you're going to say to yourself is, okay, I'm having some conversations, but a lot of these people don't pick up the phone. The reason, though, they don't pick up the phone is because they prefer other channels. You just don't know what those channels are yet. And it's taken you a long time to get to understanding where to meet them, versus doing a ton of work up front, very intensive work, but focused work on each and every single channel that individual can be found on, to understand where the release is and where they then do come back to you. Once we build a list of those contacts and how they've come back to us and on what channels they've come back to us, that then enables us to put them into the right outreach list based on phone, email, or LinkedIn. Yeah. And then when we actually or activate a campaign, the connection rate on those campaigns is 70 to 80% higher than on a non-validated list, because you already know beforehand that these people have a higher propensity to pick up in this channel.
Right. So when you're doing the testing, if they're a phone person, for example, not leaving a message, you're just simply calling and seeing if they pick up.
Yeah, correct. No messaging involved, no selling my product, no, we're the greatest in the world at this. It is, am I speaking to the person that I called for? Just to make sure and understand you're still at this company. Out of curiosity, does your role comprise of X, Y, and Z? And it will be a series of research calls like this, no more than a few minutes on each call. But if the person picks up every time, we call that a picker-upper. We know that they're more than likely to pick up a phone, even if they get a cold call, once they get a cold call coming through to them.
Yeah. And what about text and SMS? Is that ever part of the funnel?
So we do use SMS as part of the approach as well, because again, it's good to understand the kind of impacts of text messaging. We don't see the types of response rates on text messages as we do to the 3 channels that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
But there is a small percentage of people that will come back to a text, but specifically, we don't see anything really above a kind of 1 to 2% response on SMS.
Yeah, and so if I'm a founder doing this, right, should I be using my phone number, or should I be using, a phone number I've bought, etc.? What's the best when you're doing this research?
I mean, as a founder, typically your number will be everywhere anyway. So I don't see the problem with it being my number. But if you do have a number for work, then I definitely would suggest using that, as it will just enable you to obviously have filtered calls and understand exactly where those calls are coming from. If you're a founder, like I said, your details are going to be on Zoom Info or Cognism or any other platform likely anyway. So people will find you and they'll know that's the number to reach you on.
Yeah, great. So you've done the research. So I know that you're big into permission, right? But sort of take us through the next step. If I know that this person, and I think a phone example would be great, because, if I think through all of my clients and the people in the Cloud Consultants collective community, I don't think many of us are using phone, right? We've all defaulted to what's easy, which is email or LinkedIn. So take us through a phone example of, how would you seek permission? How does it move on from there?
So when we're talking about phone outreach, one of the biggest lessons that I learned, and this came fairly late in my career, I guess, the way that it was explained, is you're an interruption. When you're calling someone out of the blue, you're an interruption. And there are some pretty significant questions on the mind of the individual that you're calling, which is, who is calling me? Why are you calling me? What do you want? Right? So really, when you call, and as I have done in the past, call through, hey, am I speaking to Paul? It's Antoine, calling you because of X, Y, and Z. It sounds like everybody else. Yeah. Right? Everybody is calling me and saying this. Every time I get their call and it sounds like that, I put the phone down. I don't want to take a call. When we use the permission-based openers, the call's a lot more focused around allowing the prospect to invite the conversation. So it would sound something like, hi, look, you weren't expecting my call. I know I'm an interruption. If you've got a minute, can I spend some time and just introduce myself? What I typically get back from that is, hey, sure. Why? Because on the call, I've introduced myself, where I'm calling from, and the fact that I'd like to take a minute to explain why I'm calling, because you don't know who I am. Once we get the invite as to a yes, that's fine, you've got a minute, I would typically then say, look, appreciate that. If we speak, if what I say over the next 30 seconds or 60 seconds doesn't resonate with you at all, feel free to put down the phone. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
That typically generates a yes. Now, those 2 questions on the opening part of a call, there will be people that argue, oh, it takes too long to say that. They would have lost interest by the time they pick up the phone. But actually, what I find is, because there are very few people that have been impacted by calling this way, especially from a cold caller, it disarms you fairly quickly because, again, I've given you a call, I've said who I am, I've said where I'm calling from, and then I've also said, if you need to hang up on me, then I'm not going to be offended, and that's okay.
And just quickly, do you use a similar approach to email and LinkedIn?
So on email, typically we will lead with the problem as to why we're reaching out. So I know that you've not heard from us before. We're an agency that focuses on this. Typically, we help people that are focused on this, this, and this.
Yep.
Do any of those, are you focused on any of those in your world? Very short email cadences, not big, long kind of scripts about who we are, what we do, who we work with, and why we're amazing. But getting to the point of, you don't know me, but this is where we sit in the space and add value. These are the things that we typically deal with. Curious to know if you're facing any of them. And that's specific, that's normally our call to action.
Yeah. Right. And is it a similar type of thing with LinkedIn?
Similar on LinkedIn as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So let's say so we've got that sort of, we've got their attention. What's typically the next step once you've got your attention back onto the phone? They've heard you. What then typically happens?
Yeah, so they've heard us, and they've liked the intro. They've given us time to speak. We have a discussion around the challenges that we deal with and what they're specifically facing. Then it will be just a couple more questions to find out how long they've been facing it. Why is it that they think that this problem still exists in their organization? And from there, whether or not it makes sense for us to continue the conversation at another time and another date. Once we get that call locked in, then we will prepare for that call by going deeper into the company on research, finding out more about, have they been involved in any recent mergers and acquisitions? Have they just launched their company? What's happening in the space that they're selling into right now? And then from there, we would then have a discovery call, which would then go further into understanding exactly where they are, what it is that is causing them the biggest headaches, where those headaches are coming from, and really drilling down into whether or not our service is going to be one, firstly, that is going to make an impact on the problem that they have, if it's going to be able to solve the challenges that they're facing, and if it's going to be able to add value and provide the outcomes that they're looking for. And similarly, it gives us a very good understanding as to whether or not the company that we're speaking to really understands us and the way that we go about our business and the value that we can add if we are allowed to do things in the way that we have seen impact positively on our customers.
Yeah. And is there any specific tools you're using in that research, or is it just stuff that's desktop research public to everybody?
I mean, it's always publicly available information. We use intent data. We also use different platforms that give us an understanding of what's happening within a company's tech stack, for example. So I'm sure you've potentially heard of HG Insights. So understanding, is this company using this ERP system? What else are they using alongside the ERP system? What's their CRM system look like? Do all of their technologies kind of speak to each other is what we look for. Do they have kind of, completely siloed processes? Who is the stakeholder committee within this company? What do they look like? So we'll put all of that information together typically before getting onto the next stage call. But the first layer of information that we're looking for is the stakeholder. It is the kind of, the business proposition, and it is the business challenge or pain that they're focused on, where we will be able to ignite a further discussion from that.
Yeah, because I think, some of the material I read doing my research before this call, as you say that, roughly 3% of people are, in that buying cycle right at that point. So, it's important to make sure that you're working mainly with a 97, right? So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And just like, was that HD Insights?
Sorry, HG Insights.
HG Insights. Right. So we'll put all these links again in the show notes for you if if you're walking or you're thinking, I don't want to listen to the whole thing again. We'll have it there because Antoine's giving so much value. And so so that's fantastic. I know that you talk about some other ways, so events, round tables, just tell us what's working and what's not working. In particular, I know that you had a client in this space that's a SAP partner as an example. What's sort of working in our world at the moment?
So Outbound on its own will not get you to the results that you want. Okay, you have to have these systems working together. So your inbound, which is what you're going to be generating from activities, whether they're on LinkedIn, whether you're developing webinars, kind of content for people to be able to consume, go away, understand, and then they can come back to you when they're ready with either questions or if they believe that your solution is one that's going to be able to help them move forward. So what you've said there is absolutely right. 1 to 3% of the marketplace that you're selling into at this moment in time is ready to have a conversation with you and purchase the product that you're selling. But that's a very, very small amount of people compared to what the opportunity that you have to go out and get your message to people. So if you're going to then impact those others who are potentially going to be ready now, but most likely they're not going to be ready now. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months that they're going to be ready to have a conversation with you. Where a lot of companies fall is that the initial outreach didn't bring about the response that they needed for a short-term win. And then those companies kind of fall by the wayside, right? And if you're not in front of them consistently, when it is time for them to come back on to looking and implementing the solution that you sell, then one of your competitors is going to have got ahead of you. So the reason I talk about events, or webinars or private roundtables or kind of, a kind of physical or digital roundtable, should I say, is because it is giving you a way to capture the attention of your audience and build on the awareness that you've created, but also to be able to give them ways to be able to learn about you, to be able to learn more about the industry, to be able to learn more about things that you can guide them with and you can help them with in order for them to come better, even if it's not buying your solution or service right now.
Yes.
And for you to be sat there with that information to say, okay, well, look, no problem. We've had a really good conversation today. There's a couple of webinars that we produced that I think is going to be pretty valuable for you in your step of the journey right now. Let me send those over to you and give you some stuff that you can look at in your own time. Whether you do that on a drip feed campaign, they sign, i.e. you'll send it out to them every other week, for example, or every month they get something from you. You want to be synonymous with what it is that you do. And because they heard about it from you first, they will see you as the industry leader as far as that information and that kind of niche that you're focused on. So when you're developing these different avenues towards yourself and towards what it is that you do and towards how it is that you can help people become better without needing to spend on your services right now, it tightens the bonds that they have with your organization being seen as the number one for that specific area or that challenge that they're facing right now.
Yeah, brilliant. And any tips on how to get people to your list newsletter, right? Because, some of those things you can obviously give those sort of offers in your newsletter. Yeah, any tips on how to do that? Because I must admit, I myself struggle. I've tried so many different scripts, some work, some don't. But yeah, I just wonder if you've got any that you'd love to share, like the brilliant ones you've already given for phone and email.
Do you mean in relation to how to drive people towards your content or towards your newsletters?
Yeah. So let's say that they're not ready to buy now, they're in the 97. What's a great way to move them into your list or your orbit so that you can continue to stay in front of them?
Yeah. Typically for me, it takes place on the call. So, we'd have a conversation, we'd find out that, you weren't aware of this before, but I brought it to your attention. And it's something that you hadn't looked at outside of this, but you're going to start taking a look at this as time goes by. When might not be tomorrow, might be next week, might be the week after. But if I can find out from that conversation with you to say, typically, how best do you like to learn about these opportunities? Would it be via email? Would it be on LinkedIn? Are you more active on there when it comes to learning about either events or webinars that could be of interest to you? What's the best way for me to be able to get that information in front of you? And then for you to let me know, okay, well, actually, I know I picked up the phone to you today, but anything that comes into my email about this, I'll pick that up straight away, or I'll pick that up on LinkedIn. That gives me the opportunity in my system to say, okay, great. Now, any information that is going to go to Paul or any information that is going to go to anybody that I speak to, it needs to go in the form of this cadence through LinkedIn or through email. It's going to be sending over, here's a webinar that you might find interesting. Here is a newsletter that is relating to X, Y, and Z point that I believe that you would find interesting. And it's just keeping the level of engagement high in their channel of preference where they've asked you to send it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, I know we're about up to time, so we're going to do the rapid fire now, but I could just ask you so many more questions. And I think I'm going to put a big R here, which is repeatable guests. Let's get you on. And maybe what we'll do is get you on with a specific case of a cloud consultant. Like I know that you have worked with someone before in this space, and hopefully you'll work with more people in this space now we've introduced you to the community. But what we'll do now is do this rapid fire. So the first question, what are some of the daily sales habits that you do that we haven't talked about already that helps you to accelerate sales for your own business?
So daily sales tips. One that I've used forever is I never get on the phone cold. I'll always do a practice pitch either to myself, to my colleagues, to whoever is in the vicinity that will listen to me, to get those cobwebs out, right? It's like if you go out and you try and run 100 meters as fast as you can. You're never going to do that on the first run because you need to warm up. So I think warm-up's essential when it comes to outbound prospecting and being able to get on the phone and sound, pretty effortless in your delivery.
Yeah, brilliant. And what about for you? How do you find out the latest trends, new techniques, etc. in sales? What's your go-to place?
My go-to places right now, obviously, Google is a wealth of information, so I do lots of active research. But I think more valuable than that and quicker than that is dark social groups. It's where I met people like Adam, for example. So, you're in those groups, you pose a question, somewhere somebody knows what it is that you need or that you're looking for, and you get very, very quick feedback as to what's happening in the market, what people are seeing in terms of swings or in terms of, just new things that are impacting on the sales process that I can, very easily start looking into and gaining an understanding from that.
Yeah, brilliant. And, that's why I created the Cloud Consultants Collective for that very reason, right? It's so much quicker, as you said. And, it's experience too. It's not opinions, which I also love. The next one is, now, if we could grant you one wish for sales driven at the moment, what would that be?
One wish for sales driven. It would be to have the knowledge of a consistent pipeline of quality, I would say, people that we would be able to bring into the business. So I think the hardest thing for most organizations is finding great people and finding them consistently that come into the business, able to perform, that lets you then move on to the next part of growing the company. I think that would be the one thing that I would love to have right now.
Yeah, brilliant. And, you sort of mentioned a couple of things through the podcast around, finding the right data points, etc., so that you're picking the right channels for the right people. But What else have you learnt through this journey that you wish you may have learnt a little earlier to accelerate your business?
Oh, that's a good question. I think in terms of what I've learned, I would have loved to have learned earlier was the impact of my approach on Outbound. I think that I've been outbound for 17 years. I've never not done outbound selling.
Yes.
But it took me through a long journey, B2C, B2B, kind of bashing people, hounding people on the phone. Obviously, it comes with a level of experience, but I think that moving to a perspective of a buyer led kind of sale, and also being focused on how buyers like to be approached, has been the biggest kind of game changer I've had to my kind of process, and also the way that I then teach my team as well.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, look, if you are running or you're riding your bike, etc., like I said, all the links will be in the show notes. You can find out more about Antoine Marsden at salesdriven.com. Now that's DRIIBN. So it's salesdriven.com. Once again, it'll be in the show notes, and you get the full transcript, because all those beautiful scripts that Antoine mentioned, you can actually get that at the transcript that'll be in. And it's not a perfect transcript. What we do is just take it as it is, but you'll get the gist of what he said if you haven't had the chance to write them down, because, there's absolute gold in those examples you've given. And also check him out on LinkedIn as well, which the link will be there. But Antoine, just fantastic to hear a fresh perspective. And I've literally filled my sheet with things that I'm going to go and take and implement, both in my own business, but also the clients that I work with. And hope you listening will do the same thing. But great to have you on, Antoine. And as I said, it won't be the last time.
Thank you. I hope it helps. And it's been a pleasure being on the show. Appreciate it.
What a great interview. And we will get Antoine back and go into the transcripts and get it. Also, what you've learned from Antoine, which I'm sure you've taken away some things. Mention him on LinkedIn. He'll love that. There's the summary. As I said, you can get the full transcript at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast. And why not share it with others? As a cloud consultant, how hard it is to do outbound. So send this to your peers so they can help. They'll think you're a rock star. You can check out our solo shows. Don't forget the Cloud Consultants Collective.com, which is a great place for all cloud consultants to gather. And if you want created content from me, which includes this podcast each week, only for cloud consultants, go to paulhigginsmentoring.com/newsletter. And next week's guest is Mandy Ellefson on being a hands-off CEO. And you're going to absolutely love that. Take action to accelerate your sales.
I'm fired up after today's episode. What about you? But hey, before you go, learning is just one piece of the puzzle. Now it's time to put today's strategy into action. Head over now to today's show page at paulhigginsmentoring.com/podcast and share how you'll put it into action. Be sure to head over to your favorite podcast platform and subscribe, rate, and review the show. Tell me what your favorite episode is. And don't wait 1 minute more to gain access to your pulse check at paulhigginsmentoring.com. This could be the difference between struggling to get more leads and making this next quarter your best one yet.